Good to see you. Hi. Hey.
Hi.
Hi. Did you all find your email this morning with the printout that was sent out, the little PDF? You've got that,
Yes.
or it's on your
Yep.
screen? Great. Very good. Um, do you all have a refreshment?
Yep.
Do you know where to get one if you need one? And a snack? Yeah. uh, We're so glad you're here. Excuse my crackly voice. If you need to get up at any time to step away and take care of your body, please feel free to do that. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our bodies while we're having this time together today. If you need to kind of draw while you're listening, please feel free to do that. It's just about being together and listening to this great information. I'm so excited to introduce Christa Donner, who is a wonderful, wonderful artist and also a parent, and has so many great things to share with us today. So I won't take any more time. I'm just going to turn it right over to Christa, and thank you all for being here.
Hi, everybody. This is a new thing. Can everybody see my face over the slides? I'm kind of excited about that.
Yeah.
Does that work? Woo, it's fun. Um, so my head might overlap a little bit, the words, but that's okay. I'm going to have everybody, we're going to be talking a lot about the senses and about nature and what got us interested in nature. Which often, right, is like a smell or a sound or a particular experience out in the world. So can everybody think of just, it doesn't even have to be your favorite, just a sound or a smell or a texture that you found in nature that comes to mind with this prompt. And you can either type it in the chat, or if anybody really wants to share it out loud, you can unmute for a minute and do that. But that can be our way of, you maybe put your first name and your favorite sound, smell, or texture that you found in nature in the chat. I'm figuring out how to read this. Oh yeah, I see crickets. I hear some crickets outside right now. Rolling in freshly cut grass. Best thing ever. Rough. It's a good texture. What's rough, I wonder? We got any more? I love the smell of summer fields, birds singing. They're so good. Baby birds. Oh, wow. Smell of rain or tomato leaves. Yes, more crickets. The surprising softness of a leaf. These are so good. All right, now I'm going to try snowy tree crickets and cicadas. Maybe that's supposed to be snowy tree, comma, crickets and cicadas. I'm gonna raise this up and it's gonna, oh, cicadas, my dog. Pardon my sliding thing here. Cicadas, I love cicadas. Probably you pronounce them cicadas. My daughter's always on my case about pronouncing it differently than other people. Great, so keep them coming. I'm going to show you the next slide. Who is this? Does anybody know who this is? It's a mole. Yeah, it's a star-nosed mole. It's a really amazing sensing nose there. So humans are creatures who have five senses, and this is someone, a star-nosed mole, who doesn't actually rely on vision very much. And vision is even though humans have five senses, the one that we tend to use the most often, many of us, a lot of humans tend to rely on vision the most. And then we kind of forget about the other ones, or, they're there, but we don't pay as much attention to them often. But when you live underground where it's dark all the time, vision's not very useful, right? So what senses do you think this guy uses the most?
Nose.
Nose, definitely nose. Any others? So smell and, yeah, and texture, touch. So moles can really sense vibrations underground, and they know from the texture, like if it's moist over here, if there's a vibration over there, they know where to go. And the smell can really, this one in particular, you can tell from its nose that it uses smell a whole lot. Yeah, it doesn't, I think it does, it might have eyes, but it doesn't really use them. So they're very small and don't pick up a lot. Oh, let's see. So when you think of art, right, you probably think of things that we look at with our eyes. I know I do. Actually, I went to college to study painting and drawing, which is visual art, right? Um, but what I tend to make art about, I'm going to move this a little so you can see it better. That's not what I wanted to move there. So I make a lot of art about the body and those five senses that we were just talking about, and also the bodies of other organisms, other plants, trees, and animals that we depend on for food and shelter and medicine. Even the tiny bacteria in our bodies and on our bodies that can either make us really sick or they can help us to digest our food. They're actually really, really important for us to survive, those bacteria sometimes. So it's easy for people to take all these other creatures for granted, right? Sometimes we don't even think about that they're there, but they're there. And I don't know how many of you got to see the other online program, the Zoom with the Wild Center a little while ago. Ooh, that's a nice face in the chat. They're made all out of punctuation. So this the Climate Science 101 event that happened on Zoom a little while ago with Hannah at the Wild Center. One thing that she said really, really struck me, which was that we have all the tools and technology that we need to stop climate change. If people don't, I don't know if everybody saw that, so I'm going to include a link to it in the chat. We're not going to watch it right now, but if you missed it for some reason, let's see if I can easily add it. If you missed it for some reason, you can watch it again later. But have humans stopped climate change? We have all the tools we need, really? Who can tell me? Has anybody, have humans stopped climate change from happening? You can unmute to say, oh yeah, no, I'm getting a no. Another no, nope. Well, that's frustrating, right? Why not? I think there's a lot of reasons. Maybe you know some reasons that I have not thought of. But one reason that I think about a lot is that a lot of humans just aren't thinking about how we're part of this. Humans are lazy, someone says. How we're part of this big network of plants and animals and bacteria that make up the world. We think of ourselves as the best creatures or the most important creatures, but we're not even really the most powerful ones in some cases. But I think a lot of people lose track of that because why? What are we doing instead of being out in the natural world, being a part of our ecosystems? What are we doing instead? Working, yeah, we're working. We just have thumbs and we like to brag about it, being in cars. A lot of us are on screens. Right now we're on screens. Uh-oh. A lot of people are on screens in their heads, and they're not thinking about physically our bodies and where we are in the world. So that's something that I think about a lot, making it worse with pollution. Yes, definitely. So it might seem like if you're a kid, if you make art, it might seem like, well, we can't do much to change that. We're not engineers or powerful leaders of countries, at least not yet, right? But you can actually do a lot with art making, right? With poems like the ones you wrote last week, some of you, with pictures and with sound, because even if we can't make people take better care of the planet, even we want to, we can use our artwork to help people think differently about the world that they're in, to help them notice what's around them. So one thing artists can do is that we can wake up public imagination when people they can't picture a future without fossil fuels or pollution. We can help bring their attention back there. We can help them picture what that might look like. when they can't imagine what ways other species might perceive us, might think about us, we can help them to imagine that. So my background is in making pictures, right? I draw and I paint. But a few years ago, I started to get really, I started to think about my role in the natural world and how some of my strongest memories in nature and some of the reasons that some of the things that made me care so much about climate change and about pollution and about this whole web of other creatures that we're connected with is my senses, my other senses, right? Not just seeing them, but the smells, the leaves outside, the sounds that I hear, those things kind of clue me in and remind me I'm not the only one here. I'm not the humans aren't the only ones here, right? Um, so I started looking at other artists who are using more than just the visual senses um, to really get people outdoors and experiencing things, imagining things in a different way. So I'm going to share a couple of those with you. There's a whole long list. I'm not going to share all of them, but one artist that I met when I was living in Chicago, I lived in Chicago for many years. There's an artist named Norman Long who grew up in a part of the city and still lives in the part of the city where there are a lot of steel factories and a lot of pollution. And people there often don't have a lot of money and they don't have a lot of access to trees or parks or natural spaces. So it's really hard for them to feel connected to any of that, right? Now, Norman is a sound artist, and he actually won an award to take over um, an abandoned lot. Like, I don't know if it was a parking lot or it was just an abandoned space in his neighborhood and turn it into what he calls a listening garden. Anybody have ideas of like what's a listening garden? What might happen there? And you can unmute yourself if that's easier, or you can type it. What would a listening garden be
It
like?
would probably be like an area where like there's just it's all silent and you can just listen to like the sounds of nature and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's definitely part of it. Any other thoughts? Like, I see lots of birds, definitely lots of birds. But why would there be birds there? Why would birds want to come to an area that's all pollution and factories around? It's all car traffic. There's not a lot of, originally, I see some trees in the background there, but a lot of it is very polluted, right? In the neighborhood around there. Yeah, fruit and seed trees, silence, a big garden. A garden would bring birds. You know why? Because what would bring birds to a garden? Seeds for sure, worms definitely, plants, insects, somebody said. Yeah, so the insects that birds eat, the worms, the plants, the trees, those are things that usually aren't there in that neighborhood. So he brought a lot of that in. He brought a lot of native plants in, and those native plants attracted insects that would like to hang out there, and then the birds came because they were interested in the plants and the insects. Um, so he's bringing nature into this space that was really not made for that before, and he also added sound to the natural sounds that were there. You can see, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this is one of a few little speakers. He's actually makes a lot of electronic music, but his electronic music uses field recordings, so recordings from the natural environment. And then he blends those with other things, sound music that he's making with synthesizers and computers. And he kind of blends that with the natural sounds that are already there. That really it changes what everything sounds like. It probably is very interesting for the birds and the insects that come as well. And then it invites people to kind of pay attention and think, is that sound coming from a speaker or is that a bird that's over there, right? It gives them a different kind of experience of being outside and gives them a place to rest and kind of think about what's all around us. And I thought that was really inspiring. Um, and then another artist that I met in Chicago, who now lives in Florida, she lives in Miami, Florida, is Fareshta Tusi. And she uses storytelling and interactive activities and sound and even wading in the water at night with flashlights to get people outside. get people off their phones, and just thinking about how we're all connected to the past, present, and future of this environment that we're in. And this is not an artist necessarily, or I don't think he considers himself an artist, but when I moved to Massachusetts, which is where I live now, a few years ago, one of the first people that I met was this young man named Aiden Hawk Owl, who was 11 years old at the time. This picture of him right here is when he was, gosh, I'm not sure, maybe 5. Um, when I met him and he was 11, I met him because he was leading a public walk to people in the community to teach them to safely identify wild foods and harvest them sustainably. Super cool, right? My daughter was just like, what? How can he do that? He's the same age as me. And he was leading all these adults around. He does this like twice a year, maybe more actually, but I go to 2 of them every year, different seasons. Now he's been learning about wild edible plants since he was really little. He started learning from his dad, who was interested in harvesting and foraging for food. And then he started reading books. And now he's like one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about this topic. And he loves sharing that knowledge with other people. So one thing that really makes his walks memorable, we learn so much. And it's a very cool last name, Hawk Owl. One thing that makes his walks really memorable is that he always ends with a big shared meal of foods that he's prepared ahead of time from the plants that he's helping us to find and identify. So it's one thing to go on a walk and have somebody tell you, oh yeah, sure, wild plantain, it can be good in a salad, and um, you know, cattails are really delicious if you prepare them this way. And it sounds good, but then you're thinking about, maybe I would just like to go home and have a hot dog or something, right? So you come back to this, at the end, you come back to the field house at the park, and he and his dad have prepared all of these different dishes, like a pie made with ferns and cheese and, other things, from the land, and desserts made with wild sumac and all these different foods that they've made. So you taste it and you're like, oh, maybe I could make this. Maybe this would be good to have more than once, right? So this may not be something we think of as art, but I think what he does is a really great example of this kind of sensory connection with the world around us through touch and smell and taste in this case. So I've been talking again about like human senses, but I want to bring us back to our mole friend for a minute to remind us that not everyone senses the same landscape in the same way. Not even all humans do, right? But certainly other creatures don't sense it in the same way. So on the right here, you can see 2 pictures. These are pictures by a biologist from Germany named Jakob von Uexküll. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you his name later. Oh, I'm getting some really nice, Melissa says, I love smelling sassafras and black birch bark. Me too. Like a root beer smell, right? So these are 2 drawings by this biologist, von Uexküll, to try to explain this idea that he thought about a lot called Umwelt. And you can see the word is here, Umwelt. Umwelt just means in German, it's like the self world, the way of experiencing a world of other living things. So on the top is how he is describing how a human might see it. A human might look at a landscape and we would see flowers, we would see some trees in the distance, we'd see the stripe of grass here. And on the bottom, it looks really, really different. And this is actually supposed to be how a bee might see the same exact landscape. What differences do you see between those 2? He's trying to express something that, again, he's trying to express something he's seeing visually as a human. And then down here, there's other things going on, right? So I wonder what he's trying to get across here. Any guesses? Yeah. Weird shapes, but they're also mesmerizing, definitely. Does anyone know anything about how bees sense things differently than humans do? Yes, ultraviolet rays for sure. Smell, definitely. Right. So it's also curved, I notice. I'm not sure, that might have something to do with their eyes. Does anyone know anything about their eyes? It's different from our eyes. They have more than two eyes. They have like hundreds of eyes. These are all compound eyes, right? Each one of these eyes has all these teeny tiny little receptors, many, 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 many receptors in each eye. So it's going to make things look differently. We don't actually know exactly what it would look like, but this person's sort of guessing what that might look like. Ooh, 3 extra eyes for navigation. So silly. I don't even know. 8 eyes. I'm getting some different. Now I have to look it up. I have to learn some more about bees and how they see. But one thing that this made me think about, right? Not only do they sense things differently, but if they sense the world differently than we do, the very same world that we're in, probably they communicate differently too, right? Does anyone know how bees communicate with each other?
Dancing.
Dancing, yes, thank you. Yeah, so they communicate by dancing. I think also probably other ways as well, but they have like a waggle dance and they dance a certain way to communicate to the other bees. If you go this way and this way, it's a whole map, right? They'll explain the map to get to some pollen through the wiggles and waggles of their dance. Um, so this really got me thinking about like, oh, wow, there's so much that we can learn from other organisms, but we don't speak the same language. We don't sense things in quite the same way. I'm not a scientist, so I don't have a way to figure that out exactly, right? But I can imagine, and I can try to share that imagination with other people. So back in my studio, I was thinking about all these ways of sensing the environment. And when I'm outside, I really tend to gravitate towards sound for some reason. So I started making recordings just with my phone. This phone that I was just talking about is a bad thing a minute ago, right? But you can use your phone or you can use other kinds of, this is my field recorder. Look how fuzzy it is on top. That fuzzy bit on the top keeps the wind from affecting the recording. So you don't end up with a lot of in your recording. But sometimes I just have my phone with me and I can just use the voice recorder in my phone to record sounds that I notice, that I hear. So I was volunteering at this nature preserve near my home. And every time I would go, I would make a sound recording, maybe different spots in the park, right? Maybe I would notice some birds over here. I would notice insect sounds over here, and I would record them. And I got quite a collection. So I also started to think about all the other creatures who live there, right? Like we visit the park, but these creatures live there all the time. And I wonder, what would they have to say to us, right? So, of course, my first thought, and maybe your first thought too, is that they would scold us. Who thought that? Anybody? That's what I thought. I was like, oh, they would be mad. They would be mad at us. But I think it's actually more complicated than that, right? Like I'm pretty sure that ticks and mosquitoes think we're great, don't you think? And trees, maybe trees feel a little bit sorry for us, or maybe they have something to teach us. So if you have headphones, does everybody have some kind of like, if you don't have headphones with you, that's fine. But if you have earbuds or headphones, you might want to put them on because I'm going to play. Oh, good. Some people do. I'm going to play one of these messages to give you a sense of what I came up with. And this is just the sort of the introduction to the rest of them. They're all different. They're all different voices, right? You can see these are some of them. We've got the welcome, we've got the pond, we've got the deer. I'm just going to move this out of the way for a minute. And put this here. Let's see if I can find it. Okay. And hopefully, yeah. All right. So do people have their headphones on? Thumbs up? Okay. And if not, again, it's fine. Just turn the sound up. So if you have headphones, the nice thing about this is that you'll be able to hear it in space, like around your head, which is fun. Okay.
to billions of beings.
That's not starting with a B.
You might know us as
Can everybody hear that okay, though? That
milkweed.
I know it means to be honest. Let's see. I'm going to start this again. Could you hear that, what I just played? Even though it was just for a second? Okay. I'm going to start from the beginning now. Here we go.
Dear human, thank you for meeting us here. Go ahead and start walking in any direction that feels right to you. This land is home to billions of beings. You might know us as milkweed, coyote, tree of heaven, brown bat, coneflower. We are the deer, the night herons, blackberry, bagworms, and bees. This walk is about all of us, the multi-species community of which you are a part. Maybe it's become hard to hear our voices over so many sounds of your own species, which have become quite loud. So we've worked with others of your kind to translate and broadcast transmissions through your phone, a tool that seems to focus your attention. As our honored guest here today, you living inside and on your body have become a part of our family here. Let's get to know each other better. When you're ready to listen, choose a location on your map or a being that you'd like to visit. Once you've reached a place where you can find one of us, select the corresponding track and press play. As you walk between locations, take off your headphones and really listen for a while. Without adding any sounds of your own, smell the signals we send through the air. See if you can sense what we are saying without amplification. And along the way, maybe you'll find ways to transmit messages of your own.
All right. So that was just one of them. And you know, each one is the voices of those. Like I wrote the messages myself. But I was thinking about what the voices of these different creatures might sound like. Again, what they might have to say to us. But really a lot of that was the sounds that I was collecting. I'll play another one for you in a minute if you want me to. I wanted to show you before we get too far in how you can start to record things. You can record your own voice, and you can also record the things outside with a tablet or a phone. So I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable doing that. I know not everybody has used the voice recorder before, but even if you have, whether you have an Android phone or an iPad or an iPhone or some other kind of device, can you check and see if you have a voice recorder? If you know you do, that's great. Oh, it sounds like the sounds are coming from my speakers. That's not great. Thank you for telling me that, Henry. I want it to sound a little bit better than that. I don't know how to fix that though on Zoom. So can everybody check on your device and see if you can find, sometimes you just go to the search thing if you're searching for apps, and see if you can find voice recorder. And if you can't find it, let me know in the chat and we'll try to make sure we can help you find it. Okay, you can't do it right now, Samantha. All right, so some of you definitely have it. You don't have to do the recording part. I just want to make sure people know how to look for it and how to find it. So iPads definitely have voice recorder. You just have to search for it if you're searching in your apps. Your phone's dead. Okay, you might want to plug it in because we might need it for the activity that we do in a few minutes, so you can use it. But yes, you can always do the recording part anytime. But it looks a little bit like this, and you can see here there's the sort of sound wave happening here. Regardless of what device you're using, that happens there. And one thing that I want to recommend, if you start recording a lot of sounds like I do, is that you'll end up with so many, and they'll just be called, I don't know, they'll give it a number, right? And then you'll go back. It actually, you know what it does? It tells you where you recorded, which is somewhat useful. But if you record like a whole bunch of things on your street and you're like, oh, all of these recordings say, you know, like 14 Poplar Road or whatever, you know, whatever street that you're on, then you're not going to know what they are, and you might end up deleting them all later, or that you might have to go through a lot of them to find what you're looking for. So I recommend once you make a recording is to name it. Just click on it and then give it a name, so that then you can go back and find it and decide, oh, here's those crickets I recorded in the Hollywood Hills. This is a sample that I found online, right? Or this is the Yerba Buena Gardens. So, you know, I can find that later. So I have a whole collection of these sounds on my phone and on my voice recorder, but this is basically what I use to start setting up that that piece. And then there's a lot of free editing programs. We're not going to do the sound editing together today, but I want you to be aware of that these are available. A lot of programs, some of them even come on your computer, and some of them are just programs that you can download from the internet for free. So one of them is Audacity. GarageBand comes on a lot of Mac computers, and then Reaper is available for any kind of computer, and they're all free programs, and they all kind of have an interface that looks a little bit like this, where you'll see your sound waves, and it's sort of like a collage. You can move these pieces around and edit them and make some parts quieter and some parts louder, and that's how I made that introduction that you just heard, was just by moving all of these different parts around. It's a little more complicated than that. But I will say that I went to art school for drawing. I didn't learn anything about sound in college. I did all of it through internet tutorials online. Whenever I had a question about like, how do I make things louder in this program, I would type it in and somebody made a video about it. So, it's it can be really fun to play around with if you're interested. So the welcome that you heard, right? One thing that I was doing there was that I was thinking about, oh, people are always on their phones. Oh, why don't I use a phone to get people back in their bodies and back in nature, right? So the way that I decided to do that was that I made a map, a physical map that had these QR codes. Have people used QR codes before? You take a picture with your phone or some device, and it takes you to a website. So each one of these takes you to a different sound message, like that one, from a different creature that lives in the park. So the welcome one was here. We've got a pond, we've got a deer, we've got a tick right here in a tree. So I realized that phones could actually be really, really useful. And then later, the people in the park liked my project so much that they wanted to have something a little more permanent, right? The maps are really great because I could, share my drawings and this map and help people to explore the space. But the people in the park were like, what if people don't have that map? So they invited me to make trail markers. And that was another thing where I had to figure out how I was going to make them. So these are laser cut. I had to learn how to do laser cutting. Maybe some of you even know how to do that, but I didn't. So I had to get someone to show me how to do laser cutting, and then I learned how to use a post hole digger to make holes to put these wooden posts in. And now these are permanent trail markers that, again, people can take a picture with their phone and it takes them straight to the soundtrack. I'm going to play one more for you. I think I'll play Tree. Does that sound okay for you? So if you want to put your headphones on, if they're not already, see if I can get that to go. I don't know what to do about making the sound better, but hopefully this will not be too tinny sounding. Okay, I'm going to start.
Dear human, hi there. It's me over here, the large tree just next to the path. Listen, we have a quarter of our DNA in common. I think we might have some things to say to each other. Could you step a little closer? Place a hand on my bark. It's hard to feel you over there. That's better. I've got a question for you. How would you describe your relationship with time? I've always wanted to ask that, but we seem to exist at such different speeds that usually you're gone before I can get the question out. This has been a tough 5 or 10 years. I've lost some good friends. We'd look out for one another, tip each other off when the bagworms were coming back, or if a polar vortex was moving through. Sometimes we just joke around. It's hard to see pieces of them stacked up along the gravel road back there with their limbs cut off. You seem like a good listener. There are advantages to putting down roots. We share messages and memories across so many miles, thousands of years, in every direction. Consider which actions will mean something to those who live generations from now, after our bodies have been turned into paper bags or mulch. I want to show you something. Just stand still here with me. Relax your limbs, relax your focus, and imagine that below your feet are tiny roots burrowing down. Can you feel them? Close your eyes. Can you hear the sound of my branches overhead? That's all you need. Now let that reverberate down your trunk and into the soil below your feet. Can you feel that? It's like a mirror underground. Branches reaching out into the layers of the earth, traveling past rocks and the remains of older and older things. Down here, time is only connected through threads of mycelium. There's no light at all. The earth presses in on all sides. Extend a root tip toward that hard thing to your left. There's a chunk of something there, centuries closely packed together. If you stay in contact long enough, it'll tell you its stories. But for now, let's return to the surface. Traveling back up through your trunk, higher toward your crown. Lean your head back. Look into me. Every one of my limbs splits into branching points, smaller and smaller. Every branch is a choice, a possible future. Spending slow time here in between the past and the future is kind of the point. When life moves a little too fast, I'm here. Feel free to come sit with me if you need help slowing down. I can be a good listener too.
So, and so each one of those is a different voice, obviously, different voice of a different creature, in this case, a tree. And the different voices come from people in the community. Thank you. Yeah, so I wrote the messages, and then I was looking for people who could read those letters. And there's something really, really interesting and magical about when you write something, you write a message and then you have someone else read it. Different things come out that wouldn't have come out if you read it yourself sometimes. Oh, good. Forrester says, I felt like I was really talking to a tree. So yeah, so each one of those has a really different personality and a really different voice. And they're all people who, like that's a guy who's a steward of that park, who's there every day, helping to manage, helping take care of those trees. So I thought he had the most amazing voice for that. And then there's others that are read by someone who runs the nature play space there. Just different people who work in the community of that nature preserve and have relationships with those plants and animals. And as you saw, right, those letters, they all start with the same phrase, which is "Dear Human." And later this morning, I'm going to invite you to write a letter from someone who's not you, someone else who lives in your environment. And you can start to think about who you might want to imagine writing a letter from to humans in that way. Now, just because I started working with sound, do you think that means I stopped drawing? No, I didn't stop drawing. I love drawing. So drawing can also be a really great way to share your ideas visually. And it turns out that making a drawing, especially outside, can actually use all of your senses, right? When we look at a drawing, we're taking in visual information, but you can, right? You can get a lot just from making the drawing. Now, this is not a drawing, this is a photograph. Who knows what plant this is? Anybody? So pretty, yes, the dandelion. So people have seen these, yeah? Even if you live in the middle of the city, you can find dandelions sometimes. This one was a picture taken in Chicago, again, where I came from. It was just growing out of the sidewalk. So they're tough, really interesting, tough flowers that grow up and have deep, deep roots that pull poisonous things out of the soil and help make it healthier. So I can see dandelions all the time. I can take a photograph of them like this. I can smell them, but drawing them does something else. Right? So here's a drawing on the right that I made of a dandelion pretty recently. And drawing can really focus your senses. It can help you to notice more and learn new things about something that you look at all the time and you think you know all about it. And a lot of scientists actually use this kind of drawing to collect information that they can use to study something more deeply. Does anybody notice anything about the drawing that you don't see in the photograph? What's happening in the drawing that's not happening?
You can see all the roots and stuff.
Yeah, you can see all the roots and stuff. You can see here, there's this, one thing I figured out from drawing it up close was that I noticed, oh, each one of these little petals is its own flower. I would not figure that out just from looking at a photo. I noticed the shape of these leaves, right, is really particular. It's actually, I guess, why they call them dandelions, because the leaves are like big teeth, lion's teeth. And then I was noticing the colors, even though I didn't have very many like colored pencils with me, I was noticing the colors there. So all these different details are things that I noticed because I was having this different kind of relationship. I'm smelling it, I'm holding it, I'm seeing all these different layers. And while I'm drawing it, it's bringing all my senses into play. So this is called nature journaling. And maybe some of you, has anyone done nature journaling before? Anyone done that? Maybe some of you have done like a workshop, or maybe you just do it on your own. But one thing that happens when people are nature journaling, and again, this is something scientists do all the time, or some scientists do, is that they'll draw, but they're also taking notes. They're also writing things down. And as you're drawing, you'll write down, I notice, or I wonder, this makes me wonder about this. This reminds me of this. You're not necessarily trying to find answers or write a scientific paper. You're just noticing and writing these things down that you hadn't noticed before. And that can lead to some really interesting observations, and it helps you get to know that plant or animal a lot better very quickly. Now, if you don't feel like, if you think, oh, I can't draw that well, that's okay. Nature journaling is not actually, doesn't have anything to do with drawing well or being a good artist. There's a lot of different ways that you can get the same thing out of this experience just by making different marks on paper and looking closely. So for instance, if you're drawing a leaf, you can trace the leaf. A lot of people will just trace the actual leaf on the paper, and you'll notice things about that shape as you're tracing that maybe would be hard to do otherwise, right? Like you'll notice just how much of a zigzag is happening in the leaf, for instance. You can also, if you have paper and crayons or something, you can make a rubbing, and you really notice things about, oh, I knew that a leaf had these sort of lines coming out from the center, but until you do the rubbing, you might not realize, like, oh, they're all curved. Here, I'm going to get out of the way. See it? Right? So that's something that you might notice from making a rubbing that you wouldn't see if you're just looking at the thing or passing by the tree. And one thing that I like to do a lot, I don't know if you can actually see in this one, but these leaves, I actually traced the shadow. My paper was, I was holding the dandelion up, and the shadow was kind of being projected onto the page from the sun. And I just traced it, and I didn't have to worry about getting the shape just right, because it was right there. And I realized how much more complicated that shape was than what I might have drawn if I was just trying to make a good drawing, right? So tracing things, there's no shame in tracing. I think that can be a really good way to learn a lot about what it is that you're trying to capture and understand, right? This is a page from a student's nature journal, and I just wanted you to see how they're actually right here behind me, right here. That's the actual leaf. That's they've taped an actual bunch of tree needles to the page, and they're drying out, but I think they actually used them here to trace it and just get that down. And as they were doing that, oh, they noticed that it's not the same all the way down, right? Like there's these things happening in between. And so they pointed that out, and they drew a close-up, it's like a magnifying glass, right? Like a zoom bubble, zoom. Because they wanted to notice what is happening there. I had not noticed that before. And you can see they're writing, I wonder how old this leaf is. And what about the tree? How old is the tree? Below here, you can't see me because I'm in front of it, but this leaf reminds me of window shutters, right? And so that might not be, that might just be, it's a connection that you make in your mind, but it also might teach you something about why the plant is made that way, why it is shaped that way. And here they're just pointing out 3 segments separated by flower-like clusters. So they're noticing as they're drawing. That's what nature journaling is all about. You can even include the sounds that you hear in nature, right? You can include the sort of sound effects. So here in this one, I was drawing a scene, and I was really aware as I was drawing of the sounds. There's like up here is a highway, right? So I was just hearing like this whoosh of traffic, and then this sound of an insect. Here were some crows back here going caw caw. So I'm trying to make notes of the sounds that I'm hearing as part of the drawing, and that was a big part of it for me. So what I'm going to invite you to do, what's this? Caw caw. I'm reading the chat here. So who's ready to think about doing a little nature journaling and a little sound recording if you have the equipment to do it? Anybody ready? So I shared with you, there's a lot of pawing happening in the chat right now. I shared with you this handout. So if you have the handout, you can get that out. If you don't have the handout, you can print it out, or if you want to put in the chat, we can send you, actually, I can share a link to it right now. If you don't have a printer, it's pretty straightforward. It's just something so that you can, remember what it is you're going to do. And we're at 1:53, so I think we could even take Is 20 minutes too long? Do people have an opinion? 15 minutes or 20 minutes to do this exercise? If people need to like go get materials or use the restroom before they go, we could take a little longer. 15. Okay. We can do 15 if that's enough for people. So when we take a break, and now I'm getting 20. Okay. Well, I'll think about it. See when I'm done here. So make sure you have the handout. And if you don't, just open up that link that I put in the chat and you can get instructions. That works. But what I'm gonna have you do is you're gonna be going outside just around. It doesn't have to be like you're not going to a park or anything. You're just going maybe outside your house or your apartment or wherever you are, and you're gonna find a place. Good idea. 17 minutes compromise. I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Henry. You could go to just a place where you can sit for a little while, and you're gonna set up your device so that you can record some sound, and you're gonna draw and make a nature journaling page, kind of like the ones I showed, but it really depends what it is that you want to focus on. Choose a plant or a tree or an insect or a bird that you can see. Yeah, that's fine. Plants in your house, or you can go, if there's a window you can go to, you can look outside. That's also fine. And like when you're recording the sound, the thing that you're drawing might not make a sound, right? If you're drawing squirrels, they make a sound, so you could try to record that. But if you're trying to record a dandelion, do dandelions make sounds? Not so much. So what do you record instead then? I would say you could record, the sounds that they're hearing, right? Even if you're drawing a plant in your house, what sounds does that plant hear, right? You can absolutely take photographs. But the nature journaling is its own sensory activity. So I often will take photographs, but then you want to kind of set your phone down and let it record sound. And you're going to just draw and have that drawing be sort of a full body experience, right? Let yourself kind of get lost in that. So what we'll do is when I say it's time, we're going to set an alarm. You know how to set an alarm on your phone or your watch or anything. You can set an alarm for 17 minutes. There's not going to be any talking. You're going to be as quiet as you possibly can. So you're going to try to record the sound that maybe those plants or animals hear when you're not there. Yeah. You're going to try to remove yourself from the sound recording. And you're going to be, and you're just going to be, the only thing that you're going to be responsible for once you start your timer and your sound recording is you're just going to be drawing and writing, any combination of those things. And we're actually going to, you do not have to take Zoom with you. We're just going to take a break for 17 minutes. And when you come back, we're going to do something with your writing and your drawing and your sounds, and we'll share them. If for those who want to share them, we'll find a way to share them. Are there any other questions before we do the next step? Because I want to get us ready for sound in a minute here. Any other questions? You can post them in the chat. So we're going to start with something that a sound artist that I really admire named Murray Schaefer. He did this thing that I really like to do before I'm going to go and listen and record sound and just get lost in my other senses. And he called it ear cleaning. And this does not involve any Q-tips. We're not using any soap or water. But what he does is he will ask people to, we're not going to do it yet. You'll take your fingers in a minute and you'll plug your ears for 10 seconds. And I'll let you know when it's time. 10 seconds. And when you take them out, you'll be really listening and thinking about sound in a different way. You don't need to worry about whether sounds are coming from people's feet, or if someone tries to talk to you, or if there's a bird or a lawnmower or wind in the trees. They're all sound. None of those are bad sounds. They're all just sounds that are happening. And we're really going to listen. Even if you don't have a way to record it, that's okay too. but I want you to really listen to the sound and try to not add to it. If somebody tries to talk to you, you can whisper, or you could try to use hand signals or write it down. But you're going to do your best not to add to the sound during as long as you can during the 17 minutes while you're drawing and recording, and just see what that's like. And we'll talk about it when we come back, okay? So if you're ready, I want you to get your fingers ready. We're going to do 10 seconds of ear cleaning, and then I'll let you go out with all your stuff. And if you have any questions, you can type it in the chat before you leave the house. But we'll take a break for 17 minutes. And we're going to start ear cleaning now. Ready? All right. That the drawing pictures of the plants, that's where this handout comes in handy, right? You will be doing a nature journaling page, and you will also be recording sound at the same time, if possible. So if you don't have that link to the handout, I'm going to include it here again. It's right there. That has all the instructions. Okay. All right. Fingers ready. 10 seconds, and I'll tell you when to go. Start. You can take your fingers out and go on and draw and listen. And I'll see you in 17 minutes. All right, well, we can start talking as people kind of make their way back. I expect some people, you get outside, it's a little hard to come back in, right? So I'm curious now, what kinds of things did you notice? Does anybody want to share what plant or animal or thing they decided to focus on for their drawings for the nature journaling part?
I did too.
Pumpkin, oh wow. A lot of leaves. And if people want to turn their microphone on, you can also just, share that way too. Snake root, oh, that's cool. Probably could have stayed drawing longer. Some of you, oh, I see a drawing showing up. Lizzie, do you want to share your drawing with us? Maybe turn your
A
yeah, there
rock
we go.
and a
I can't hear you for some reason. Can somebody check the oh here. Sorry, go now. Now I can hear you.
I did too. Made of grass and a rock.
Wow, a rock and grass, you said? And did you notice anything when you were drawing? Did you notice anything about anything new about those things, either the sounds around you or the experience of drawing? Did you notice anything new about the rock or the grass that you hadn't noticed before?
Well, I looked closely, and there was a kind of squiggly line going through the middle of the grass.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool.
It was long and thin.
That's right. It's squiggly. That's cool. And Cody, I see that you have a drawing to share with us. You want to share yours?
Yep, it's a tomato leaf.
It's a tomato leaf. Oh, it's right there. And then you did a rubbing. That's great. What did you notice about the tomato leaf when you were doing the rubbing?
I noticed it's very small, flat, triangular, soft, wool, on green stem, veins, and that's it.
That's a lot, though. That's cool. Awesome.
Leaves have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot to notice, right? And you probably pass that tomato plant all the time. Now, when you see that kind of leaf, you'll be like, "Oh," maybe you already would, but you'll be like, oh, I know that plant, right? I know it in a different way now because I made that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. That
I
always
recorded a bumblebee.
What about a bumblebee? You recorded a bumblebee. That's cool. All right, Ariana, I'm going to share. Henry will do you next, but Ariana's said she's like to share a drawing. You want to share a drawing?
Yeah, I just want to share a quick drawing I did.
Great.
I couldn't go outside, so I had to just draw whatever I have. So found this nice one. We did a little drawing there of something that really interested me. It's like the leaves overlapping.
Oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah, how they overlap, the way that it's growing. And that's something you
Yeah.
probably, I don't know, had you noticed that before?
I'm not sure. I think it's the first time I noticed that because I've been just looking at that plant for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, it really makes you pay attention. So even if you saw it, you probably hadn't thought about it in quite the same way. It's a really interesting thing that I notice from drawing sometimes. Cool. And then Henry, you had one you wanted to share on
Yeah,
your,
I sent it in the chat
oh
because
great.
my it's hard to see from my iPad screen.
Oh, I see it. I see it
Yeah.
there. Some leaves.
I'm I'm more of a digital artist, so I drew it on my iPad.
Yeah, that
Um,
works too.
but it's basically I was just sitting at our table in our backyard and it has a bunch of holes in it as you can see, but I was noticing that some leaves that had fallen, they were wrapping around like those little holes. They were wrapping around some of them. So
Mm.
I was interested by that. I was interested, like, I wonder how they ended up wrapping around that, like, even after they had fallen.
Yeah, right. Like maybe they got
Yeah,
wet. You think that happened,
yeah,
or
maybe.
they just yeah, wrapped around so it actually changed their shape. That's really cool. Anybody else want to share something that they made, that they drew? Violet drew a bird, sounds like. Forrester, you did something, did you do a digital drawing also? If anybody else wants to share drawings, you're welcome to either put them in the chat, which I didn't even know that works now, but I'm excited. We can do that now. Or you can turn on your camera and just show us the drawing, whatever you want to feel comfortable with. No? Okay. You don't have to share them. One thing that we're going to do, at the end, I'll include this link again. I think this is the right one. But we've got a Google Drive folder that if people want to share their drawings and or their sound recordings, we would love to collect them because I know that Kevin is working on an art show, like a virtual art show, but also maybe a real in real life in-person art show. And anything that you feel comfortable sharing of your drawings or your writing later or your sound recordings, we might be able to include in that way. So that link that I just posted in the chat is to just a folder. The folder right now just has the handout that I shared with you in there, but it's a folder that you should be able to just drag your own files in and share them that way, and then we'll have a copy of them. And if you name it, like just put your first name, then we'll know how to credit you, because otherwise we might not know whose art we're sharing. So just name your file with your name so we can make sure people know who made it. So how was it to be quiet for that long? Did anyone immediately start talking? Was it really hard to be quiet for that amount of time? What did you hear when you listened? What kinds of things did you notice about the sounds around you? I see easy. I didn't talk. I have a recording. Cars, sadly. Yeah. I'm getting it off my phone. So, but I'm curious what you noticed about what you heard, right? Like, yeah, so we noticed cars. I know that when Cody says yes, it was hard to be quiet. It can be so hard, especially if other people, like if you see your friend or something. I do this sometimes with college students, and they're like, oh, they're college students. You think they'd be really good at this, but they'll see their friend in the hallway when we're like going out to listen, and they'll be like, oh, like they're really trying to not talk, but it's hard. Um, But also, right, you notice the sounds if you're thinking about your plant or your bird or whatever it is that you're drawing, and you start thinking about what are all the things that they hear. They're hearing so many different things, right? They're hearing birds, they're hearing cars, somebody mentioned. What else are they hearing? What else did you notice that maybe you didn't register when you go outside? We're not usually like paying that much attention to sound when we go outside. So I'm curious, like, what did you notice? Anything surprising or anything about the mix of sounds that you heard? You can unmic yourself or put it in the chat. So these are all part of the, like we talk about a landscape. A landscape is what we see, but there's a soundscape. The soundscape is all of the different sounds in an environment at the same time. And it's not that anyone is a better sound or a worse sound, but often we just filter out the ones we don't need and we just pay attention to one. So if somebody's talking to us, that's what we hear. Or if we're out there listening for a bird, we just hear that bird and we filter everything else out. But when we're really listening, and sometimes when we're recording, we're really listening, then we start to notice all of these other sounds that are coming in. It was really, when I was making the Dear Human recordings, it was really hard for me to get a recording that didn't have a plane going overhead. I had never noticed before how many planes were going over that area until I started recording the sound. And I was like, oh my goodness, how am I just gonna get the sound of like bees and birds without all of this other stuff in there? So I had to actually really work at it. Because it's part of the soundscape. It's part of what goes on there. So I think what we're going to do now, if it's okay with you, is to think about writing a letter, right? So you've done a little drawing, you've done a little sound recording. Now I'm going to have you write a letter and think about, I don't know, if you chose one plant or one animal to write about, while you were drawing them or recording them, were you thinking about what it might be like to be them? Maybe not. Maybe you were. Yeah, I see a thumbs up there. So that's what we're going to do a little more in depth now. So whatever your plant or animal was, I want you to imagine what it's like to be them. I'm going to share my screen here just to take myself out of it a little bit. Let's see. There we are. Now we're in a landscape. Probably not the one that's right outside your door, but we'll imagine we're here. So I want you to imagine what it's like to be them. And you're not gonna use any paper right now or any pencil or anything. I'm just gonna ask you to close your eyes. Can everybody close their eyes for a minute? Or for a few minutes? Close your eyes. If you don't want to close your eyes, you can just blur your vision and sit back. And we're just going to take 3 deep, slow breaths in. Take a deep breath in and out. And as you breathe in again, you're going to picture that place, the home of that plant or animal, as clearly as you can. Breathe out. And all the colors and the textures and the smells of that place and any chemical signals that they might be sending. Breathe in and out. Think about that plant or that animal. And picture them as clearly as you can. Picture what it would be like to be that plant or animal. If you drew a few of them, just pick one. What are they sensing and what do they think of you? What kind of message would they want to send you if you spoke the same language? Maybe they're curious or they have advice for you. Maybe there's something they really want you to know. When you feel like you have an idea what they might want to tell you, or might want to tell a human, maybe any human, then you can open your eyes. All right. So we can just start there. You might not have it fully figured out, but I want you to take a piece of paper and something to write or draw with. And I want you to make a message to a human from this creature or this plant or this tree. What kind of message would they send if they could? Would it be a thank you note? Would it be an angry letter? Would it be some advice? So you can have your grown-up help you if you want, or you can each make your own. I'm going to try to play some nature sounds while we do this, but we'll just take, I don't know, 5 minutes and make a message. And it can be a drawing if you want, or it can be a letter. If it uses words, start with dear human and then go from there. Okay. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I have a couple people asking, what do we have to do? So I'm asking you to think about the plant or animal that you were focusing on for the nature journaling, or one of them. Imagine what it's like to be them. Imagine what kind of message they would want to send to a human. Maybe what they want to tell you. And then we're just going to write a letter or make some kind of visual message to share. And we'll take 5 minutes, okay? This is great. And some people are sharing their letters in the chat. You know what would be fun? What if we read each other's letters? Does anybody want to volunteer to read Melissa's letter from Sneak Root? Lizzie, you want to read that one? All right, could you read that?
I'm not finished with it.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You can keep working on it. Do other people need a little more time? We can take a couple more minutes. And people who are done can keep sharing them in the chat. I love these letters. All right, so if you need a little more time, you can keep writing, but I think we should start reading them. Can someone read? Does someone else want to read Melissa's? Her mic's not working. Can we get a volunteer, or should I sign someone? Evan, can I get you to read Melissa's?
Sure. All right. Dear human, who will visit today? I feel the breeze in my spent flowers, the weight of my fruit, as I wait for bees to dance upon me.
Great. And then let's see, can we get, who would like to read Forster's? Anybody want to volunteer? Can I get Henry, could you read Forster's?
Okay.
I'll get Ariana to read the
Dear
next.
human, it deeply bugs me when you start picking all of the flowers in the field, and when you assume that I'll just kill you the second I come. The bee.
Awesome. Ariana, you have volunteered. Would you read Henry's? Ariana, your mic is still off. Can you read Henry's if you're up for that? Or maybe that's not going to work right now. Can we get someone else? That's all right. Would someone else like to read Henry's? I don't know who else is up for reading things out loud. Maura, did you read it?
Me? Sure. I'd love to. All right. Dear human, it's me, the leaves. I have little time to speak to you as I only have 1 year to live. But I want you to remember this. Even if you get crushed like a dry leaf, get back up. Keep trying. Hold on. You can do whatever you keep going at, even if you have such a short life as I do. Wrap around that hole. Think outside the box, no matter what. Even if nobody cares about you, if you're a hair on a head, a leaf on a tree, don't give up.
That was so great. Isn't it cool to hear different people read these? I think it's amazing.
That was a fun letter to read.
Yeah, it's a great letter.
It was a great letter.
I love the I have little time to speak to you as I only have 1 year to live. Like that's one thing that, when I was writing my Dear Human letters, I was thinking about, I did a lot of research about the different organisms that I was trying to come up with voices for, because I wanted to make sure I knew their backstory, right? I needed to know more about them. And then I would learn all these cool things that would really help me to develop that character. So that's the next step. Let's see. Samantha's got one here. Somebody want to read Samantha's? Who hasn't read one that would like to? Henry, you want to read Samantha's for us?
Sure. Dear human, you're very clever and cool like me. Sometimes I have trouble finding out how you use your cleverness. Maybe you have trouble finding out how I use my tricks. We're still cool anyways. Sincerely, the Red Fox.
Awesome. And then we've got a letter from Cody. Somebody want to read that one? Lizzie, would you read that one?
Um, Dear human, why do you hate us? You leave out our food each week, so you should expect us to want around. The world does revolve around birds, you know.
That was great. That was Stripey Cookie's letter. And then there's one more. I'm going to read the tomato leaf. Dear human, I love you so much. You can pick tomatoes off my little plant. You're my best friend in the entire world. Love, Leafy Boy. Are we missing any here? Is there anybody who had one they want to share that didn't get to share one? You want to share a picture that you made or something else? Kevin's asking Stripey Cookie if that message is from a squirrel. I like that we don't necessarily know. You leave out food each week, so you shouldn't have expected us to want some. Is that from a squirrel? Who's that from?
Yeah, it's from a squirrel.
Cool.
I just
I love that.
took a squirrel at the end.
Excellent. And then here's, dear human, I wish the planet was not as hot. I wish the soil was not as dry. And I wish the sky was blue all the time. But even I say all thin, I know you take care of me just great. You water me, you talk to me, you even get to know me. I know it's not your fault. It's all humans' fault, but I know you cannot fix it all. So thank you for taking care of me. It's really nice. These are great letters, and I know there's probably some that people feel shy about sharing too, and that's okay too. But I think there's something about imagining ourselves in the position of these other creatures that we share our lives with, right? We don't think about that too often, but there's something about that I hope, like helps us to remember where we are in all of it, and I think helps other people too. So if you, let me see if I can find this. There's the link here that I'm going to share with you again. If you want to share your sounds or your letters or your drawings, anything that you made. And if you know, this is one way that we can make art in response. Let me find the chat. There. This is one way that we can make art in response to the things around us, but there's tons of other ways. As you know, you can write poems, you can make drawings, paintings. You can use the other senses in all kinds of interesting ways. But I, I just wanted to give you sort of one approach to thinking about how artists can kind of open up people's imagination and maybe our own imagination to notice the world around us, and notice the other plants and animals we share nature with, to make change happen. Does anybody have any questions or anything else that they want to share? It was really, really great to meet you all, and to share this time with you. Thank you so much.